The biggest factor I would say is age. He's extremely popular with the youth. The youth is very, again, for a lot of reasons that we already talked about. Uh, there's an emerging consensus about pro market, pro property rights, pro liberty, etc. Um, they really hate Peronism. You can see this in polls. Like all the previous generations are like 50-50, like 50% like Peronism, 50% are very anti-Peronist. Like the under 30s are just 80% against Peronism. It's dominating. And one of the reasons Milei is trying to court the more traditional establishment right is because they are very popular with uh, old people over 60s and retirees, and especially in the cities. And other factor that might play is that Milei is again very popular in the interior provinces, in rural areas, and that's what's going to give him a big advantage in the Senate. And eventually, if he wants to expand his national project to not
Yeah.
be empowered just in the federal government, but also take over some uh, municipal governments or provincial governments.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 337. I'm talking to Eloy Vera Beltrán. He is in Buenos Aires, and we're going to talk about what's going on in Argentina again. We're largely going to talk about the upcoming elections, Congress. Some of the Chamber of Deputy seats will be up, Senate seats will be up. So we're hoping this will gives a lot of more seats to La Libertad Avanza because of Milei's success. How are you, Eloy?
I'm fine. I'm alright. Actually, I'm in France. I'm in the process of
Yeah.
accompanying my wife moving countries. So
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Eloy is moving to France. We're not. His wife is moving to France. So,
yeah, no,
yeah. So,
I still need to clear some paperwork, but yeah.
paperwork, and I guess your wife is French. Well, we're sorry to lose you in Argentina, but yeah, because we did have to schedule this. So now the current makeup of it looks like there are in the Chamber of Deputies there are 257 seats, and there are 40 with La Libertad Avanza,
Mhm.
and the Senate I believe has 7 out of 72.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's not really well, 6 out of 72, but that's not really advantageous to Milei. He does have somewhat of an alliance with another party, though. Is that correct? Which party is that?
Yeah, with it may appear as the Republican Proposition Party. It is
Yes.
the party of former President Mauricio Macri.
Yeah, the former so, yeah.
It
Do you know
yeah, it's
what
sort of
exactly motivated yeah. What do you think motivated Milei to go out and form a new party instead of just keep sticking with instead of just running within Pro?
well, uh, for starters, it's very difficult because the Republican Proposition Party is overtaken by a very entrenched establishment. Sort of like all of these old. It's not that old actually. It's like 20 years old party, but the founding members are still very firmly in control of the pro party, and uh, particularly the former president Mauricio Macri was the one calling the shots. So it was very difficult to try to uh, um, exercise authority over that party. That on the logistical side, like it was just very difficult to get to the point of leadership. Actually, one of the issues with the pro and the more broad sort of omnicentrist alliance that used to govern Argentina between 2015 and 2019 is that uh, it was very difficult to challenge Macri's leadership, but at the same time, it wasn't that strong leadership to begin with. So he didn't have authority to bring in line the more leftist elements of the party, but at the same time, he just wouldn't retire and wouldn't allow a new leadership to come in. And that was one of the issues that caused the pro candidacies to go to a very nasty primary election in 2023 and basically lose like half of its electorate. On the other hand, sort of the point of Milei was challenging the established parties. Not only Milei, but a lot of his advisors come from disillusionment with Pro and the broader alliance that the Pro and Macri made with centrist and leftist parties. So the whole point was to create something new, something that wouldn't be beholden to those old compacts they had with, say, the center left.
Okay, so that's good. Yeah. So, uh, what's I think it looks like we've already had some elections. I mean, Adorni, ran in Buenos Aires, and there
Yeah.
was some elections in Salta. Are those just? I guess the provincial elections are just all over the place on the calendar.
Yeah, one of the problems of Argentina elections historically is that we are a federal country. We have 24 provinces,
Yeah.
and one of the big problems with the rule of law is that they don't have fixed election dates. Every year, the governors get to decide if and when, if they are going to hold elections at the same time as the national election, or if they think maybe they are aligned with a party that is not going to do so well in the national election, they decide to unfold the election, as we say. So maybe Peronist parties during the 2023 election said, okay, I am popular in my province, but the Peronist party is not popular nationwide. So I'm going to unfold the provincial election from the national election. And that is happening all over the place this year. And most provinces have already had their local elections for the same reason. Milei is very popular nationwide. La Libertad Avanza is probably going to win the national elections, but several opposition governors didn't want to get uh, their power at the provincial level on the line.
Yeah, I've heard, for example, the governor of Formosa is still very opposed to him. Is that correct? And there's
Yeah,
also I keep forgetting how to say that word. Is it Killichoff or Kitcheloff?
Kicillof, yeah. Formosa is basically like the North Korea of Argentina. It's
Yeah,
a province with very poor statistics in any measure. Rule of law, malnutrition, poverty. The governor has been in power for like 30 years now.
yeah,
Um, the opposition doesn't hold any chance to win elections. They can't even use the press anymore. Um, it's very corrupt and related to drug trafficking, etc.
yeah,
And a lot of Peronist governors are that way, but Formosa is like the clearest example. Like I said, 30 years, the same guy in power. And then there's Kisilov, who is the de facto leader of the opposition. I say de facto because he's just the biggest one. Is not necessarily the most popular or someone the opposition is rallying behind, by, but he's the biggest governor the Peronist party has right now, and he is governing my province, Buenos Aires province.
yeah,
And actually, sorry, the Buenos Aires provincial elections are
yeah,
going to be in September, while the national elections are going to be in October for the same reason. Kisilov wants to challenge Milei, and he's sort of having a soft primary against rival factions of his own party. But at the same time, he doesn't want to. He wants to save the opportunity to say, okay, if I win, I win, but I will probably lose. So I will lose less if I first go in the provincial level where he's a little bit more popular, and then on the national level where Milei is just insanely popular.
yeah. Well, it's a different place. Well, I've heard Milei doesn't really get as much attention in Buenos Aires as he does in other places anyway. So maybe that's part of the issue. Or at least he's not as well liked. Uh, what are his best provinces? Would you say?
the best province Milei has is the like the central belt of Argentina, not the province of Buenos Aires, but the city of Buenos Aires, the capital, which is autonomous, sort of like Washington D.C. is with
Okay.
respect to Virginia, it's separate. Where Adorni won the local elections, as you mentioned. Adorni is the presidential spokesperson, the spokesman. Uh, and then the provinces in the center, San Luis, Mendoza, and the most important one is Cordoba. Cordoba is the most populous province after Buenos Aires. It's a very powerful and wealthy province, with lots of like moral and historic authority, and it's traditionally been a very not necessarily anti-Peronist, but sort of right-wing province. Like Milei won the last election by close to 70%, and he will probably win this election by that margin as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he got 74 in Cordoba, 61 in Entre Rios. Yeah, he was over 60 quite a few. So 67 in San Luis, or almost 68. 63 in Santa Fe, 61 in San Juan,
Mhm.
60 in Neuquén. Neuquén.
Yeah, these are sort of the most productive, the most populous, the most urbanized, and also the most productive provinces where with a strong private sector and a strong civil society. Whereas if you go north or south, you get more poverty, more rural populations, more dependence on the public sector and the state sector of the economy.
It's rather interesting the way it works here. It's not quite the same in Latin America. The cities in America are would be very opposed to Milei. It's hard to say. So uh yeah, so who are some people that might you think might make some waves in this election that are running in the various like it might join the deputies or join the Senate since half of the seats in both houses are up, right?
Uh, I think it's 1/3 in the Senate and half in the Chamber of Deputies. Yes.
Half of the Chamber of
Um,
Deputies. The Chamber of Deputies is 4 years and the Senate is 6 years, is what you're saying. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the Senate is the most important one because Milei is very popular in the interior provinces, which are overrepresented, sort of like in the Senate of the United States, being a federal country.
Yeah.
If your popularity is pretty widespread territorially, it's easier to get a large majority in the Senate. In the deputies, it's more complicated because, again, in the single most populous province, which is Buenos Aires, it's like 50-50. And the others, he's very popular, like in Cordoba, but it's not so overwhelming. What are the big names for this election? Um, well, Adorni. Adorni is going to
Yeah.
not be a national deputy for now, but he's going to be in the Buenos Aires city legislature, and probably he's going to run for mayor of Buenos Aires in 2 years. Then Jose Luis Espert. Espert was the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party before Milei was
Yes.
in the 2019 elections. Then he had like a falling out with Milei, and then he rejoined Milei when Milei became president, and now he's very close to him, and
Yeah.
is one of the more hawkish budgetary uh, on the Congress Budget Commission. Uh, Another one is probably, this is a rumor, but it's basically confirmed, the current Minister of Security, Patricia Bullrich, who again was a presidential candidate for the Pro Party, for the more right
Yes.
wing of the Pro Party. Then she joined Milei. That really helped him win uh, the runoff during
Yes.
2023.
Yeah. She and Petri joined me like because Petri was her VP candidate. But yes.
Exactly.
And
Uh,
they both have pretty key cabinet positions.
Yeah, and they sort of represent the more center-right faction or the more establishment, more traditional right faction of um, of Milei's party, La Libertad Avanza. And there are other names we could mention, probably Agustin Laje, which is one of the most important sort of intellectuals of the Milei side is maybe running for deputy in Cordoba. Um,
Yes.
those are the big ones. Then there are probably many like more local important people that are going to run in the various provinces, but these are the big ones who are probably going to make news nationally.
Yeah, Augustin Laje, just for anybody who would want to look that up, that's Laje. Yeah, he's a pretty young guy too, 36. So yeah, so we
Yeah, he's like intellectual slash influencer, sort of like
yeah,
I'm who made this documentary? What is a woman? Sort of like
Matt
the
Matt Walsh.
sort of like the Mad Walsh of Argentina. That sort of personality, that sort of audience.
I'm not sure where Matt Walsh stands. Matt Walsh very rarely comments on economic issues. I will say he doesn't. He steers more at that cultural stuff, and he's even
Yeah, Laje is more focused
yeah.
on cultural stuff, the cultural battle or the culture wars, as he calls it. Um, and that's probably going to be one of the major shifts if Milei wins a large enough majority, that he will start to make more emphasis on the cultural stuff rather than just the economic stuff. And that's again plays with the tension between the more right-wing populist and the more center-right traditional wings of the Libertad Avanza party.
Well, maybe he could also work on getting rid of. I mean, a lot of. I've always had this fear. Well, if this can just be ended by an executive order, then it can just be restarted by an executive order. And if we do
Mhm.
something in the Congress, then maybe we can. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people when they go in and cut government, they just end up cutting back on the trees or cutting back on the weeds. And anybody who's dealt with weeds knows the weeds grow back. Uh,
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah. But if you go in and actually start, a little more work, would you take the shovel and dig the weeds and pull the weeds out of the ground? Well, then your weeds are done. It's sometimes that's seems to be a lot what or you cut the branches off the tree, but obviously there are things that are working. What do you think he wants to do on cultural issues? Is that really? I don't think that's really been his focus, has it, or is that just something
No,
public is demanding of him?
no. Uh, Here comes my bias. I personally,
Yeah,
uh, I'm very libertarian on like civil issues. I really don't care that much. Um, uh, and it's very split. Again, he's very popular in cities, in urban centers, because he's not placed that much emphasis on things like gender ideology, abortion, etc. Partly because he doesn't have large enough majorities, whereas his political economics, his economic policy does have a large enough consensus, and that's probably going to show some tensions between the more progressive, if you want to call it that, or more libertarian side of the coalition and
yeah,
the more conservative or paleo-conservative side. One thing he might try is go for abortion. Abortion is legal now in Argentina. It has been for a couple of years.
yeah.
And maybe he will try to either revert that or create some sort of restrictions. Um, but the mandate he has is still largely on economic issues and the economic reforms and deregulation. Like you said, he had delegated powers from the Congress. It's really surprising how much he has gotten done with such few seats in both houses of the Congress. That's why he had to negotiate, compromise a lot, and why he had to rely on the Congress voting him a large packet of delegated powers, which actually expired a couple of weeks ago. Uh, and that packet of delegated powers is what his Ministry of Deregulation has been using to cut on waste, to privatize companies, and to uh, make more efficient several branches of the Argentinian government. Now, as I said, those powers are expired, and if he wins a large enough majority, he will probably try to create a more consolidated and more permanent reform on the legislative level, rather than something that is as we say, a tiro de decreto, one decrease or one executive order shot away.
And that's smart. They didn't give them these emergency powers that passed the next elections, which was a smart move. You wouldn't want to give them those kind of powers too much. But certainly and it's been effective. We've had, I think, with the exception of the first month, we've had continuous budget surpluses every month. We're not even really talking about them anymore. It's just kind of, well, that's just the way we're just getting used to them. And
Exactly.
Eloy, the other thing too, though, is, and several other people said this, he's really changing the minds and changing the culture. Is that fair to say? I mean, he's making people want to believe in free markets, whereas
Yeah,
they might not have believed in them 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah. Again, we can talk about like the causality on this.
The what?
It's the causality, like what is the cause? Like, is Milei sort of like riding on a wave of pro market sentiment that is the result of just 70 years of overregulation, or did Milei really create this wave he's riding? I think Milei's role, his personality, his charisma, uh, his political audacity can't be underestimated. But at the same time, I think there are conditions that make the Argentinian people particularly receptive to this sort of thinking. Again, we have had 70 years of every flavor of statism, right wing, left wing, communism, socialism, nationalism, protectionism that you might name. And there's a growing consensus, even amongst the center left, that actually Milei's reforms are working. The next government, whether it's Libertad Avanza or the opposition, should respect some of the key foundations of the economic plan, like low inflation, don't issue paper money like crazy, try to keep the budget surplus, be responsible with the budget. Um, don't touch people's savings, don't expropriate the banks or things like that, don't touch the privatized companies, don't touch property rights. It's still a long way to go. There's like a 30-40% of the population that is still very attached to Peronism and to the left, but there's definitely a cultural change you can see.
Yeah, when Ronald Reagan ran for president the second time in 1984, a lot of times he would just say to the public, he said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And if you went out on the street and asked Argentines, "Are you better off than you were 2 years ago?" A lot of them would probably say, "Yes," or "See,"
Mm.
and that ultimately hits it for a lot of people. It looks like, I mean, I'm just amazed. I do think, I agree, and this is something I get into arguments with. I said, "Yes, I do agree that the bad conditions helped Milei, but I also think there are a lot of personal qualities about him that helped the
Mhm.
situation too." It isn't that often when you see an economist go out there and talk to people on the street the way that he does. And
Yeah,
I did that. Yeah, we recently did that Hoover Institution speech, and this was Milei speaking to an audience that was probably a large portion of them were PhDs, and I just thought, yeah, this is not the same speech he would go give out to everybody. He was using bigger words and stuff like that, but
yeah,
it was
yeah,
but so many of our economists, are great, and they're great guys, but man, they could never go out and talk to. They could only
yeah,
talk to the PhDs.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think there's a thing about Milei, his particular personality. As I said, there was some condition. We did have the uh, government of Macri, which tried to do some soft kind of liberalism, uh, which was more pro-market. We did have Spurt's candidacy, which was the first like return of classical liberals to the national stage. But again, you see the jump in popularity between Macri or Spert and Milei, and it's very clear that he has this sort of rock star attitude, his capacity to talk to the common people,
Yeah.
and I think we also must not underestimate not only that he got popular, but when he was in power, he used it. He is using it very intelligently. Again, you have the two parties in the US that have like half and half of the Senate, and it's frozen for the last couple decades. And Milei has gotten so much done with just 10% of the seats on the Senate, and with so much things to manage in his coalition and his allies and his parliamentary agenda is really remarkable.
Yeah. What are some possible landmines or things that could possibly trip Milei up in the next few months, or that could mess things up? Because you got to be prepared for everything, but you never know what might just fall out of the sky and change things. Because he seems to have weathered a lot of storms pretty well so far.
Well, the economic uncertainty can never be fully discarded because uh, many foreign investors know that we are always just one election away from uh, the Peronists coming back to power, and that means that probably the rate of economic recovery will slow down a bit as the elections come and the uncertainty increases, and that also means that the economic team on the Milei government should be careful on how they manage this uncertainty, how they give out signals to the markets that everything is okay, that things will be fine, even if they lose by a little bit, or if they don't win by as much as they uh, pretend to. Then, one of the things uh, that I think can be, again, it's very difficult for the government to lose these elections. One, because they are very popular. Two, because they are, as you said, people are better than they were 2 years ago. They can notice, and you, you just can't beat that. If people feel like they are living better or more safely or more, or they can save money now and they couldn't before, it's really difficult to beat that. But I think one of the key ingredients is the fact that there is basically no opposition. I mentioned that Governor Kisilov um, is the de facto leader of the opposition just because he's happens to be the big governor. Uh, but like he really isn't popular nationwide, and he doesn't have the consensus of his coalition behind him. There's a lot of rival factions. Uh, I mentioned that some factions within the opposition are starting to accept the idea that okay, maybe we should be a little more pro market, less uh, don't threaten to expropriate people's property, etc. But that's not peaceful, so to speak. Uh, One of the big assets for Milei is that the opposition forces are really divided, fighting amongst each other. They don't have a plan. They are really not getting up to the spirit of the times. They are not embracing this new pro-market consensus that is emerging in Argentina, and are just out of step with what the electorate wants. Uh, One of the big things that maybe could happen is that in the process of these elections, and this is one of the reasons why many governors wanted to have their provincial elections before, they didn't want their personal territorial power to be on the line for this big primary that's going to happen with all the different factions of the opposition. If a strong leadership emerges and the opposition forces sort of coalesce around a single leader or a single program in these months, maybe that could complicate Milei a little bit, uh, because again, is right now he's facing no rivals, and if a rival emerges and a clear polarization happens, that might affect his numbers a little bit. But I really think that it's very hard for him to lose. We're talking just a couple percentage points up or down.
Yeah, you said they're just it's like it's sometimes when people are losing, they just the losing team will start pointing fingers at everybody else. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. And just Lloyd, just sit back, make some popcorn, and enjoy the show. That's what I say. Just
Yeah,
I don't know if they have popcorn down there, but
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
people.
We
Yeah,
call them pochoclos. Uh, I think one of the main things also is that there's a small segment of the electorate that's always there, that is like the radical centrists, so to speak. Actually, they are called the Radical Party. They are a bunch of small parties and that don't feel fully aligned with Milei or with the Peronists. They are a traditionally very anti-Peronist electorate, but they are not fully economically liberal, so to speak, and they don't really like the conservative aspect or the social or cultural stuff of Milei's agenda. This sort of picky voter, it's not that significant statistically, but when the election is very close, uh, they can make a difference, and we are sort of starting to see how all of these centrist parties are converging around uh, a single coalition in the last few months. So some of the districts, some of the provinces where the election is closest, you might see a spoiler effect where the left, like the Peronists and Milei, are very close, but one of them ends up winning just because the center is pulling out votes from one or the other.
yeah. And I guess the main opposition is the UP or the Unión por la Patria or the Union for the Homeland.
Yeah, now they renamed themselves to
Yeah.
Fuerza Patria, like the patriotic force.
Oh, geez, the patriotic force. Oh,
Yeah,
we're the
again, they're trying to do this sort of rebranding because there are many factions within the Peronist opposition that say, "Oh, the reason we lost is because we were too progressive. We should do some right-wing populism. We should go back to the values of General Perón, which was sort of more nationalist, fascist, Catholic." Um, they have fantasies about making an alliance with Vice President Villarreal. I don't know if this is common knowledge in
yeah,
the United States, but Villarreal had a big falling out with Milei. Um, and again,
yeah,
you are seeing that the Peronists are trying to find their new identity. They are a very chameleon-like party that will change. They are
yeah.
right wing one decade, left wing the next decade, nationalist one decade, cosmopolitan the next decade. The consistent thing about them is that they are very anti-market and uh, nationalistic, so to speak. But right now, they are trying to find what's going to be the next skin of the serpent, so to speak.
Do you think they sincerely changed their minds, or do you think they're just chasing popularity? Uh,
Many of them are just chasing popularity. Some of them are like uh, people who were maybe a little bit more uh, right wing, for example, and were not so popular when Peronism was dominated by the left wing. But now they see, oh, now is my time. I was right all along, and Peronism should always have been. This sort of thing happens all the time. We are very used to it in Argentina.
do you think? Yeah, Vijarel's an interesting case. I guess as long as she's there, she's going to be there until the next election. But I
Yeah.
suppose Milei will pick a new VP because I also know she's blocked Roscoe on Twitter. She's blocked Lilia on Twitter. So
Hmm.
she's she's definitely having feuds with some of the other women too. And boy, some of those feuds can really they can really not be good. Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's
she's not a threat. Seriously,
yeah,
um, she's not. she was popular because she was Milei's VP, and when they had that falling out, you started to see in the polls that she was getting very unpopular. Uh, and the constituency for her, that sort of ultra nationalist, ultra conservative Catholic, is already represented by so many other parties. If you are like a moderate conservative, you are already represented by Milei. If you are a populist, nationalist, sort of Trump type, you already have other parties representing you. Villarreal is just there basically by chance, and she, I believe, blew out her big opportunity at power, which was waiting for Milei to run out of his term and be his successor. But that won't happen now.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It makes me wonder why this alliance was ever formed. How important the country is mostly Catholic. How important is that to the politics? I mean, is it still important to say you support the church? Because Milei wasn't very fond of Pope Francis, but now we've got Pope Leo, who it,
Yeah.
Francis was such a
No.
communist. Although
Yeah.
Francis was the first, was you know, it's hey, he's our Pope. You know?
Yeah. No. I think Argentina is nominally a Catholic country, but religion hasn't been that important in our country's politics for a long time. Like already in the 1880s, we straight up broke diplomatic relationships with the Vatican because we were basically ruled by a group of Freemasons who wanted to sort of soft French Revolution our politics, strong secularism and civil liberties and whatnot. Um, there was Catholicism politically was always represented by the army when the military had power back in the 20th century when we had the coups. But as the army and the military industrial complex was basically dismounted over the 90s, there's really not a large constituency for people who make religion um, their political identity. Of course, you will sometimes see some politicians who bring their faith personally into their beliefs. But again, Catholicism is such a big religion that you can go the Pope Francis way and Catholic social teaching and a soft kind of humanist socialism. Then you have very conservative Catholics, very nationalist Catholics. They're all over the place, and it doesn't really matter that much. Milei, as you said, didn't really get along with the church. Many priests openly called to vote against him, and it really didn't make a difference. And one of the things that you are seeing over the last decades is that there is very big growth with Protestantism, like American and Brazilian style evangelicals, uh, who are becoming very popular in the lower classes. So that's the traditional constituency for very Catholic people. And
Oh,
amongst the upper and middle classes, you are starting to see more irreligious people, atheists, agnostics, people who identify as New Age or kind of Buddhist or whatever. So no, religion doesn't play that much of a role in electoral politics.
What's 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 the cause of people leaving Catholicism and going to Protestantism? That's rather I don't know
I'm
very
not
much.
an ex. Yeah, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it's sort of like the same cause that people in the United States are flocking from i- mainline Protestantism to evangelicalism, and then from evangelicalism to Catholicism. Is sort of this generally anti-establishment that, oh, this is the vanilla stuff, this is the traditional religion, we try this. And then you have all of these more charismatic and based and young looking people who are bringing this new faith. And again, I think American and especially Brazilian Protestant churches have poured a lot of money and very good strategies at trying to sort of capture the market for new converts in Argentina, and it's very much worked out. in the villas, like the slums of Buenos Aires and the slums of the big cities, you see that the evangelical churches do a lot of charity, a lot of
Oh,
helping recovering drug addicts, etc. Things that bring newcomers to their faith, whereas
that.
Catholicism is more as established, bureaucratic, boring, vanilla, etc.
Well, but yeah, that's but if the churches are out doing that kind of work, that's the way you win converts. I mean,
Hmm.
help it. I'm disappointed the Catholic Church isn't doing more, but getting out and getting alcoholics or drug addicts off of, do you think there's any chance of, how do you think, I realize the drugs are more illegal drugs are more of an issue there than here, and crime is more of an issue there than here. How do you think Argentina could get out of this? Does Milei have any plan? I mean, uh, I do know he re- relaxed some gun laws, which I think would be outstanding.
Uh-huh.
If you have a culture of self defense, that's the best weapon against crime. But uh, Lloyd, for example, I was reading. You just moved to France, and I read this article that during the Olympics, the French pickpockets were wondering why are Americans hitting us and wanting to beat
Yeah,
us up, and
yeah,
it's like,
I read the same article.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, why wouldn't they beat you up? Why wouldn't they hit you or knock you down? You're trying to take their wallets or whatever. And I just look at Europe and I say, why would you tolerate this? This is
Yeah,
why
in many
Europe is going to
aspects,
hell in a handbasket. I mean, yeah,
yeah, in many aspects, I think talking about European culture, it's very like passive or very used to non-violence in a way that makes them not react when they should react.
yeah,
In Argentina, it's it's more split. In
yeah,
the countryside, you have a culture of self-defense because people live out in the countryside where you need to defend yourself. Uh, People are more rustic, are more rough, and I think gun legalization or speeding up the process of acquiring and using guns could be a good step. If there's a bigger plan for drugs, the thing is that Argentina's drug enforcement policy is basically designed not to work because it's split in two levels. Uh, in the United States, I understand that drugs are a federal crime, uh,
yeah,
or drug trafficking and drug-related crime. In Argentina, most uh, drug-related crime falls under the jurisdiction of the provinces, and many of the and the federal government only acts when there's a tangible connection to international crime, like when you can prove that the drugs were smuggled from the border or there's a international gang involved. And many of the provincial police forces are basically in bed with the cartels. I would say that the Argentinian problem with drugs is very easily summarized by two examples. There are two models of dealing with drugs in Argentina. One is the province of Santa Fe, which we call the Chicago of the South, um, which has a big problem with drug violence and actually drug terrorism. The cartels openly terrorize the population, commit random acts of violence, not related to their business, just because they want to intimidate the police and the civil society into submission to not mess with their business. Uh, and they do this precisely because the provincial government, with the help of the federal government, is taking a strong stance against drug crime. They are trying to, again, go against the cartels, trying to remove the cartel bosses to maximum security facilities where they will not be able to run their businesses from there. Uh, that's a model that works since Milei assumed and Patricia Bullrich as Minister of Security. You have seen a big reduction in drug-related crime in Santa Fe. It's still a very unsafe city, but much more safe than it was a couple of years before. But the product of this open war against drug cartels is that you see a lot of violence on the street because, again, it's a war. The cartels are reacting be- because they are under threat. And when you imprison or kill one of the drug bosses, the other drug lords start competing violently to fill that gap.
Yeah.
The other model is the one that is implemented in my province, in Buenos Aires, where the biggest drug cartel is the police. The police itself is conniving with the drug cartels to sort of like uh, issue where is the territory of each drug lord, and you can sell this much in this place, and this other drug lord can sell this much in this place, and we get a fee and we get a cut. And it's very non-violent, because, again, there's no conflict. The police doesn't fight against the drug lords. You will maybe see some vendetta or some minor skirmish here and there, but it's very non-violent because everything is under control, so to speak. Everything is dialogue between the police and the cartel. But the result of that is that basically this is a whole strand of illegal trade that's happening under the nose of the state, and the state isn't doing anything about it. But at the same time, it's not sincere enough that they will just legalize it. It's still controlled by criminals who are violent, who are involved with international criminal gangs, who are in some cases involved with international terrorist organizations like Hezbollah, who launder money, who buy corrupt politicians. So these are the two alternatives right now. You either have a very peaceful society, but you accept that that comes with a large degree of corruption and crime that goes unpunished, or you have a very violent and open war against the cartels, but the result is that you will actually get to do something about it. And of course, at the time, no one is seriously talking in Argentina about legalizing or soft legalizing drugs. Marijuana is sort of legal, but the stronger stuff, that's still very outside the Overton window.
Marijuana is it's so easy to grow and it's not really that harmful. I mean, I think a lot of people just say, and and of course Santa Fe, of course, is where Rosario is. And I just realized something else too. Who was born in Rosario? Che.
Che Guevara. Yeah.
Yes, which is significant because we're talking about communists and drug cartels. They seem to be often working together. What are some of the demographics that are going for La Libertad Avanza? I mean, Milei is very popular under 30. I also hear now that he's very popular with people over 60. And
Yeah. That's basically right. The biggest factor I would say is age. He's extremely popular with the youth. The youth is very, again, for a lot of reasons that we already talked about. Uh, there's an emerging consensus about pro market, pro property rights, pro liberty, etc. Um, they really hate Peronism. You can see this in polls. Like, all the previous generations are like 50-50, like 50% like Peronism, 50% are very anti-Peronist. Like, the under 30s are just 80% against Peronism. It's dominating. And one of the reasons Milei is trying to court the more traditional establishment right is because they are very popular with uh, old people over 60s and retirees, and especially in the cities. And other factor that might play is that Milei is, again, very popular in the interior provinces, in rural areas, and that's what's going to give him a big advantage in the Senate. And eventually, if he wants to expand his national project to not be empowered just in the federal government, but also take over some uh, municipal governments or provincial governments. Um, and evangelicals, Protestants in general, are a demographic that is also very pro Milei for the cultural stuff mostly, but because again they perceive Milei to be sort of with them in this battle against the established religion, which is uh, Catholicism. Oh, and I think another demographic that's also very much for Milei is Jews, because Milei is sort of Jewish,
Yes.
um, and the opposition right now is very anti-Semitic uh, for a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get in right now. The Gaza Strip stuff, but also their traditional alliance with Iran, um, their general conspiratorial attitudes against the market, etc.
Yeah, I'm not talking much about that, but there was the bombing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that bombing that happened in, what was it, 1994?
Yeah, there were two bombings. One of the Israeli embassy in Argentina, in
Yeah,
Buenos Aires, which was in 1992, and another in the Israelite Association of Buenos Aires, AMIA, which was in 1993. Um, yeah, these were two terrorist attacks against Jewish people in Argentina. That the geopolitical context is a little bit complicated, but basically, our government used to be very anti-Western and very aligned with Iran in their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Then we weren't anymore. In the 90s, our country tried to establish an alliance with the United States and more friendly relations with Israel and Europe, the Western Bloc more generally. And Iran retaliated uh, by performing these two terrorist bombings against Jewish centers in Argentina. And since then, actually, you can see that traditionally, our Jewish population, we are, I think, the third or fourth country in the world with the most Jewish by number population in the world. There's like Israel, the United States, and I think Brazil and Argentina, or Canada and Argentina. They used to be very much like they are in the United States, very progressive, very left leaning. And after the AMIA attacks, you can see that they start to flock to the right because, again, the left became very conspiratorial, very anti-Semitic, very aligned with Iran because they oppose the United States, etc.
yeah, and these bombings actually were traced back to the Iranian government. I mean, so it wasn't just, a case of some rogue person from a rogue group of people who happened to be Iranian acting
No,
on their own. Is that correct?
the man who planned the attack
Yes.
used to be the vice president of Iran a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So strictly speaking, this was an act of war.
Yeah,
I mean,
technically it wasn't
maybe
Iran,
not quite
like it was
maybe
the
not quite as
yeah.
big as an act of war, but still, it's because it wasn't military. But you could say that it was. I mean, when the government is directly funding it, and, there's a yeah
Yeah, and there is a large Muslim community in Argentina as well,
yeah
and much of that Muslim in Argentina and the surrounding countries, Uruguay, Paraguay, especially Brazil, they are mostly Syrian and Lebanese in origin, and many of those communities, many of the religious leaders in those communities are directly tied to Hezbollah. Not all, of course.
yeah
For example, some of the key allies of Milei right now are the Menem family, which are Muslim, and they, of course, have nothing to do with this. They are the ones who suffer. Menem was president when we suffered the terrorist attacks, but in many of these communities, the Lebanese merchants operate like a sort of criminal cartel that's tied to laundering money to Hezbollah and also helping to launder money for the drug cartels. There's a big criminal network
yeah.
in place.
Okay, well, you've answered a lot of my questions, Eloy. It was great to have you back on here. We've only had about an hour. Do you have anything else to say before we go?
No, I think the most important thing to look for in the next elections is that first, look for the elections in September in my province, in Buenos Aires, which is the biggest province of Argentina. That's probably going to determine whether the opposition feels confident to take on Milei for the national elections, or if they are going to go more defensive and lay low for a while. If they emerge strong and have a unified leadership for the national election, that might be a little more contested. But again, even if that was the case, say that Milei loses the provincial elections in Buenos Aires and a strong unified leadership emerges for the Peronist Party, I still would be very hopeful that Milei will snatch a very big majority in both houses of Congress for the October national elections. So I think things are looking good for Argentina.
Okay, Eloy. Well, it's where can we find you out there? You're on Twitter right now, so anywhere else?
Yeah, if you want to find my articles in Reason Magazine or in other media, there's a link in my Twitter profile at Eloy Vera Bel, like it appears on the screen.
Okay. Okay, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel, Escape from the Village, check out my Substack, and people are giving me money to buy me a coffee. Thank you, Eloy Vera Beltrán. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.